pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. I apologize for the late start of the meeting. I had planning board I had to be at in West Hampton, so it delayed me from getting here. So, I'd like to. We always start the meeting out with the recognizing the employee of the month in the village. So for the month of August in 2015, the employee of the month is Richard Chamberlain. He works in the Parks Department. His groundskeeper is one. And his supervisor, Larry Wojcik, wrote, "In a short period of time, Rich has shown outstanding support and desire to help this department and co-workers achieve our common goal, and that is to make the village ready to stand out. His work ethic has really helped us to make a difference. All of the jobs that he set him up with, along with the summer help that he directs, have all come out sparkling. On behalf of the entire Parks Department, Rich has been a wonderful asset for us and the entire committee and deserves this recognition." So congratulations, Richard. He's an interesting guy who is actually a lawyer and decided he was going to make a change in his life, and he's done a great. He liked working outside, and
You're less than a year.
yeah, in less than a year, he's really a fantastic guy. So congratulations, Richard. No, we didn't hold it against him because he was a lawyer either, so. Well, all right, Rick? So we have public comment. We have 3 minutes per speaker. We have a few people that have signed up here. Jonathan Foster.
Should I be under communications with the board for requests?
Okay, we'll do that. Yeah. So, okay, we have Jerry Nussford. Did I mess your name up? I'm sorry.
It's Dr. Jerry Nussdorf. I don't know if, is this on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. 3 minutes. What?
Your address, please.
Just your name and address. For the
240 Little Fresh Pond Road, Southampton. Okay. And first read excerpts from last week's Southampton Press into the record, because it's related to what I'm going to talk about. It's letters to the editor, something ticked about ticket. And the person writing it is a Southam Village resident, and she writes, this is the August 6th, if anyone wants the full excerpt. "I was given a ticket for parking on a line, no explanation, where the line, no explanation what line when I asked the court attorney. I was not the only one on the line last week to see the attorney. There are at least 15 people there for the same offense." This is in the lot behind Citarellas. "The parking lot is inadequate for a store that size. If you park in a space that is not marked, if you can find one, it is an offense and you can be ticketed." She goes on to say she's a village resident. She objects to $50 for what she considers unlawful, and it's a very unfair practice. I also received a ticket there. This was on Thursday, July 2nd. This is the holiday weekend. Things were very much buzzing. The time on my ticket, they write it in military time, 16:08. That translates to 4:08. They didn't mention if that was AM or PM, but these tickets are given out by these young people aged.
1608 is.
What? Oh, okay, all right. But they should still check in the box AM or PM on the, even though they're putting it in military time. Okay.
I disagree with you on that.
All right. We won't get into that. But they're all right. Anyway, I was parallel parking. I get a ticket, $50 ticket. I think this is I was almost embarrassed. I wore my Southampton T-shirt, but maybe I should just put a line through it or burn it, or I don't know. I think $50 for parking in a lot there is a very unfair. It's a hateful kind of a practice. I did go before Judge Wilson, and the procedure is they try to persuade you into pleading guilty, and then they reduce it to $25. Otherwise, you go, but you still have to wait and see the judge, so it wastes even more time. The attorney says, yeah, you could plead guilty for half of it, and you still have to wait around. Or you set up a trial, and talking to the judge, didn't sound like a trial would do any good, because she was arguing, oh, you could park in the lot behind Starbucks. And she was claiming, oh, it's a zoo because that's a private lot and there's no enforcement. Well, I checked out that lot. Everyone was parked pretty nicely. There's spaces there. I had come from a doctor's appointment for a tick bite, went to fill a prescription for doxycycline, was told you have to have it with food. I ran in to get some food. I come out, there's a ticket there. I think the village should really rethink this ticketing blitz, whether it's I mean, they've had other hateful practices of $350 for parking by Agawam. I mean, just this revenue-raising thing of tickets really needs to be changed, because it's not the kind of place that would welcome people. It's the kind of place that would just, and I'd hope the board would consider it. And it's going to be very hard for me to carry $50 worth of pennies. That's 5,000 pennies to pay this ticket. If other people were doing that, maybe in terms of the amount of time for them to count it, maybe it wouldn't be an income thing. But whether it's called a quota or it's put in the budget for this
We don't do any quotas, and we don't.
Well, it's put in the budget, though.
We don't base the budget on any certain number of tickets that are generated.
Well, like they used to charge the maximum $350 by Agawam when they lost a way of getting revenue from that, because they didn't renew certain things in a timely way. I mean, whatever they're calling it, they're still relying on those kinds of monies.
The purpose behind ticketing people who park on the line is that basically you're taking two spots. And
if you're parallel parking and there's a spot there, and if one person is off, then the whole line is screwed. I was parallel parking. They said there was something about the lines there. So you either waste.
What you just said was, if one person's off, then it makes everybody off, because then one person's actually taking up two spots. So parking is so precious around the village of Southampton that, you know, trying to get people to park between the lines is an important.
Well, I think you had good ideas when you try to have hiring halls, other kinds of things like that, but having money off of,
For us, it's not about revenue generating. We don't look at the ticket piece as a revenue generating.
Well, then they could give a warning. This isn't on the main street. This is on the lot. One used to, before the judge would go along with these $50 tickets, a generation ago, you could have your whole car serviced for less than $50 and get change, and you didn't have people with all kind of fighting with neighbors and all other stuff.
I mean, the chief is here. He's heard the comments around this. You know, I have no idea what the volume is in the summertime with the guys in the parking piece, but I know that they're instructed to write the tickets for people parking on the line only because somebody parks on the line technically is taking up two spots.
But how would a person even know that that area was an area for ticketing and that kind of an offense versus some other area that's a private lot? There's nothing that says, okay, this is a danger zone, enter at your own risk. I mean, there's nothing that a person, and they're charging the same amount if you're on Main Street, where I can see on Main Street you maybe want to have a little better control of things, versus in a lot behind Citarella where they're just going. I went back a few days later to just see what was going on, and I saw lots of cars with tickets and lots of cars where the lines on the parallel parking were just people going over. It's not like pulling head on into a space, but it's parallel parking. If you have people coming from the city, they're used to maximizing the number of cars, so you pull in as close to the next car or whatnot instead of wasting space if your car is smaller. And this, I would hope that the village would rethink this, change this policy, have a warning, or on the first offense, someone should not have a $50 ticket and have to carry so many pennies around for this.
Okay. I don't know how you determine who gets a warning and who doesn't get a
Well,
warning.
you give someone a warning for if it's in the back lot, not the same kind of ticket as on the main street. And then you have computers, so you can say if this was a repeat offense. But can get some follow up and get some ruling or some discussion?
Well, I mean, the
of this?
ruling is that we have the code, and that they're doing the enforcement of the code, and unless the chief has other ideas around this, which I'm sure he'd bring it to the board if he does. But the bottom line is, if you're parking on a line, basically you're taking 2 spots. And that's the reason behind it, so.
Well, but
Yeah.
but the reason for that amount of money and in that location versus on the main street or some other place?
Well, I think it's all consistent with all parking throughout the village.
I mean, so that we got, but it's not gonna do the village any good if we have more letters. I mean, I write letters for my experience with this, other people write letters, we keep having these letters in the paper, the village will
Well,
lose
there's
money.
a lot of people who write letters
I
in
know,
paper,
but-
so.
The village should get the message, thank you.
Keeps the paper in business.
Okay, Jay.
Jay Deasing. I'm a resident of the village and also president of the Southampton Association. I'm submitting tonight an opinion from the Garden City law firm of Meyer, Swazi, English, and Klein, clarifying the powers of the Architectural Review Board as outlined in the village code. Meyer Swazi is a recognized leader in zoning and municipal law and advises numerous villages and municipalities throughout New York State. This 4-page opinion provides a detailed review of the ARB's powers and duties. To quote the opinion, "The clear intent of the statute and the ARB's mandate is that applications for development which create an imbalance or are out of context with the neighborhood should be rejected." The opinion goes on to state that if a building is not harmonious with its setting, even if it complies with the zoning regulations, the ARB has authority to reject or require modification of the proposal. In fact, the opinion notes that our code specifically charges the ARB with the duty, a very strong word, of disapproving buildings which are not of harmonious character. And yet, if you drive down Corrigan Street, Holy Moses Lane, as Trustee Hacktrick has dubbed it, Halsey Street, and many other sections of our village, you're going to find houses which do not fit in or respect their neighborhood. The association is requesting that you review this opinion. We offer to arrange to have Brian Stoller from Meyer Swazi meet with the ARB, the trustees, and the village attorneys for clarification. It's critical, I believe, that we debunk the myth that the ARB does not have the authority to reject projects and protect neighborhoods in our village. That is, in fact, their exact purpose. It's unfortunate that in the recent past, the ARB has chosen not to exercise its powers. Now it's up to this board to make sure that they do what they can to fulfill their obligation to protect our neighborhoods going forward.
All right.
Thank you very much.
That's everybody who signed up. Does anyone else from the public like to speak? Okay, so we're going to close the public comment. Oh, yes. Oh, okay. Yeah, so, okay. Anyone else? Okay, so we're, okay, we got no board presentations, and we have public hearings, one ongoing public hearing, local law lot coverage and gross floor area. This is still an open public hearing. The, just to bring everybody, let me just finish here real quick, and then I'll, no, wait 1 second, I'll call you. So, on the lot coverage, just to give you, what we're doing now is Paul Travis and the Planning Commission reaching out for, to engage professionals to assist the Planning Commission to, you know, to look at this and study 100 homes in the village to look at GFA and lot coverage. I don't know if anybody else had any comments around this, but anybody from the public? Ms. Conrad.
Evelyn Conrad, 18 South Roscoe Drive. Just following up on Jay's reading and the legal opinion, which of course is correct. the ARB has done a great deal worse than that, as Rick DePietris certainly knows, because he lives in the Roscoe Place subdivision. And I invite you all to drive through Leo's lane, which is cluttered now with enormous houses. And this is not just a violation of the neighborhood. It is a violation of our contractual agreement with the subdivision, the deeds that we have, the covenants that we have. All of those have been violated by the ARB continuously, in spite of legal opinions given and protests made. In fact, when 37 of us appeared, the chair of the ARB simply said, "Sit down," one opinion at a time, although they gave permission to 2 per developer to bring in large houses before the second house had even been submitted for a review by the ARB. Those developers are the hairdresser, whose name I can't remember. He's a very popular guy here. He has 2 on Johnny's Lane, right opposite Rick DePietris' house. And Chris, a real estate agent, who told me himself that he was encouraged to buy 2 properties at a time. So there are greater sins, although I'm glad that Jay brought up the ones that he did bring up about not violating the neighborhood, but about not violating the law and the contracts. Thank you.
Anyone else have any commentary around lot coverage or gross floor area and the public, the local law and the public? So, anybody from the board? I'd like to adjourn this, but I would like to adjourn this until after this planning commission has completed the study of the 100 homes. Any comments around that? So, okay.
Put it in the form of a motion, if you like.
Actually, Bob, yeah.
Yeah, my name is Bob S.A. I'm on a planning commission, and I was riding around the village, and I was going down David White's Lane and Pulaski Street. There's a house on the corner there. It's a new house going into construction. It's a good example of a house too large on a small lot. If you look at the backyard, I don't think it has any more than 20 feet in the back. And either side, maybe 20 feet, maybe 20 feet in front. It's all house. And I see this happening all over the village. The other thing I'm concerned about, and I see a lot of, is parking. You go down Prospect Street, there's another good example. Look at Prospect Street, and it's just not providing enough parking for them. Thank you.
That house, that's Legislator Snyderman's house? On the
I
corner?
believe it is, I wasn't sure.
See, what is the address or?
It's on the corner of David White's Lane and Pulaski.
Should I see candidate for supervisor, Snyderman's house? Okay, it's all right. Yes, Mr. Bachman.
Hello, Bruce Bachman, resident of the village. I just have my usual question. It's going into the planning commission. The planning commission's being given instructions. When can we look for something to come out of the planning commission?
That I don't have the answer to.
Order of magnitude, what's your objective?
My objective is
date.
to, I mean, I'd like to see this done before the end of the fall. That's my own personal objective here. But I think that, looking at this stuff, I think when you think about lot coverage, what's included in lot coverage, what are the right percentages around that, what's GFA, what's included in GFA. I always go back to what Mr. DePietris always says. Look at zoning and don't try to make it complicated. So more stuff we throw in, the more complicated and the greater opportunities for mistakes to be made by everybody across the board. So the goal would be to study what's right, study what we think is wrong, and then try to come up with some appropriate numbers around it. I hope that's done before
I'd
the
like
end of the
to
fall.
introduce another legal concept
Okay.
as well. It's called time is of the essence. Right?
Oh,
Every time we
I don't-
delay, everything we delay, we got another problem to deal with.
I'm
And
not
the faster
disagreeing
you
with
can
you.
get this
So,
done,
yeah,
and the
well,
more pressure you can put on people to get it done promptly, because I don't think length of time it's gonna make any difference in the quality, really. That's just a procrastination of people who don't wanna make a decision.
Well,
Maybe.
I
That's
think,
overstating
I would
it, but
disagree,
that's the
I
case.
disagree with you on that.
The time
Yeah,
is of the essence.
we don't disagree on that. We're in
Thank you.
agreement on that, so. Okay, anyone else that'd like to speak about lot coverage or GFA? Okay, so,
And in the back, we got Mike in the back.
Mike,
Michael White. I think what the board did last meeting was very unjust. I understand you're getting a lot of pressure, but there's no reports, there's no proof on lot coverage, there's no such report on anything you want to change or have changed. You're driving around the village and saying houses are too big. Based on what? Based on who? And, it's just somebody's arbitrary decision. And I really think that, until you have a correct report, that you should really wait a long time until everything's in, because what you did with height, I don't think that's fair. I think you should have really waited for a consultant, because I've been here a long time and looking at a lot of houses in the village, and I don't see, some of them are obviously too big and they have too much mass. Some of them might look like that. But, there has to be some kind of real information to make an educated decision, and there is no decision.
and that's what we're doing with lot coverage and GFA.
But you just changed something last time.
We did.
And you changed it because you had applications in there.
Well, we didn't
That's the
change it
only
because it
reason.
was applications. We changed it because we wanted to make a change on height. And I don't know how many applications it impacted. I don't care to know how many applications it impacted. I just know we wanted to make a change. We made a change for a few things. One is the definition of a bedroom. The second thing was the definition of a parking spot. The one thing we did do, which gave relief, was we allowed the parking actually to be closer to the lot line. Was 10 feet, we moved it to 5 feet. And then we made changes in the heights for the smaller lots, at 30 feet, under a half acre, 33 feet between a half acre to an acre, and over an acre, it didn't change at all for anyone. So it's, we have, we've had applications, most of the applications, I don't think were impacted at all. I have no idea what the number was that was impacted by that. But those were the low-hanging fruit, the easy stuff to do. When you get into GFA and you get into lot coverage, and you can't turn a whole yard into a parking lot, and because that destroys the look of a neighborhood. And how parking right now is not included in GFA, in lot coverage. So if we do that, the number has to change significantly. There's a lot of things that we need to do the study to gather the information first. And that's what we're going to do with the Planning Commission.
Well, I agree with that, but I think they should have did that with the height, because, and the other problem
Disagree with
is,
you on that.
all right, well, I don't know if I should wait to the end, but I just had a recent problem with the ARB. They denied something. They didn't vote on it. They were afraid to vote. And they say they're going to give me a written decision because they don't know how to deny my house, because I don't want to move it back. I'm entitled to 25 feet on Woolley Street. And you have a new member that thinks he's allowed to arbitrarily change what the zoning says. And I don't agree with the Southampton Association. That's not what that decision, what their opinion says from Swazi. They can't make an arbitrary decision. They can't tell you you can't have your house to meet zoning. They could suggest it, but you can't tell someone you can't have it at 25 feet. Every other house on that block on the east side is at 25 feet, and they won't allow it. They said, well, you shouldn't have it at that. Based on what? And now the village is going to have a problem, because now I have to file an Article 78. You made my lot unbuildable. Based on what? And then they started backtracking at the meeting saying, well, we don't like the grills on your window. I said, wait a minute. We've been through this before. And now they're trying to deny me on 25 feet, and I still don't have a decision. And according to the ARB, they're supposed to vote non-historic, at the meeting. So where are they doing this secret vote that they're denying me?
Well, I try to stay out of the other boards. I don't, I heard about your application on Willie Street. And,
Well, hey,
yeah.
let me show you something before you say, okay? Before you say that I have a McMansion that I'm trying to build and all the other nonsense, this is the house, 2,800 square feet, all right? A shingle-style house, and this isn't allowed now? What's next? This is the house. It's 3 bedrooms. It's got a bedroom in the basement for a 4th bedroom, and they denied it. Based on what?
You just said they didn't deny it.
They said they're denying it. And I said, well, are you voting on it? No, we denied it. I said, well, where's the decision? Well, we'll give it to you in writing. I said, who voted against it? I don't know. I've never seen that.
I'm not going to respond to the actions of another board here, because I don't feel like, I haven't seen
understand
on
that.
I haven't attended any of the meetings, I haven't looked at the files, I don't have any,
But you're putting members on that board that have admittedly no experience. The last guy you put on, he's a banker, and he says he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, but you try to get balance. I have
But
professional
balance
architects.
of what? Most townships, you have to be an architect, a designer, or a builder to be in Riverhead. You have to be an architect, builder, or designer to be on that board. You have people on the board going, well, I can't tell what your house looks by the blueprints.
We want people on the board that are reflective of the community. That's what we want.
But this is a board that's supposed to be looking at architecture. It's not like they're, this isn't like a critic's test. This is something that you look at, and you're supposed to be able to read what it is. And it's just.
So we're in a public hearing for GFA and lot coverage, okay? So, I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to say in
No,
reference
I
to
don't.
that public hearing, but,
But I mean, as the mayor and the board, shouldn't you be looking into what just happened in the ARB? Nobody knows, including the village attorney. He's not sure what he's doing yet. I mean, that's not fair. I'm supposed to get a decision at the meeting.
I don't even know how to respond to you at this point in time.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Anyone else would like to make comment about the GFA or lot coverage? Okay, so, want to postpone this to a later date. What are your recommendations here?
You can simply adjourn it, pending input from the Village Planning Commission.
So I'll make a motion to adjourn the local law on lot coverage and gross floor area pending input from the Planning Commission.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have a local law on height of elevated buildings here. We're actually open the public hearing on this, so I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing of local law amending chapter 116 of the village code with respect to height of elevated buildings.
Second? All in favor?
Aye. Rick, can you do a summary on this?
Okay, as you're aware, there are 3 sections to this proposed local law. Sections 1 and 2 continue the building inspectors or building department's long-standing practical interpretation of the existing zoning code. And it would clarify existing provisions by providing language to the same effect as the long-standing interpretation. And what's new in this local law, Section 3, it would add new front yard and side yard sky plane requirements, also known as pyramid law requirements, which would be applicable to elevated buildings. That's a brief summary of it.
Yep.
I don't know if you want me to do any more detail.
No, I think we're good. Any comments from the board on this? Michael?
Well, Yeah, I do have a couple of comments. One of the critical aspects, and we've discussed this numerous times on this local law, is the sky plane, because that will not only limit the size of houses, which have been points of discussion previously in small lots, but it will also center the houses on bigger lots, further not inflicting anything on your neighbors. That's the most critical part. The height, I think, is important too. We have a lot of big lots, and it's difficult to build a house with the things and the necessities that people are looking for today, especially along the beach, without a reasonable height to run heating ducts and cooling equipment and stuff through the floors and the second floors. So the two parts of it, the most crucial part is the sky plane.
Any other comments from the board? No. Rick? No. I'm sorry. Rich? Rick? Okay, open it up for public comment. Have one?
I find that too often here we ignore the environmental protection law. Every amendment to a zoning code is supposed to be subjected to a full Secor review. That was not done in 2005, and we have a wonderful opportunity to do it now, because this is a change, although in my view too small a change. It requires an environmental impact review. And Rick saying there is no environmental impact, which is what you said at the reading last time, is not exactly a legal step. If you read 617, particularly 617.2, you'll find that a zoning amendment requires a full-blown Secor review. Thank you.
Mr. Bachman?
Thank you. I'm the same Mr. Bachman that was here a few minutes ago. I'm here to talk about this vote, which you suppose might be making today. I'd like to see to it that the trustees do not vote in favor of the new law, and that they send the issue back to the Planning Commission for proper review, in the expectation that the Planning Commission can come up with a much better and more complete law to deal with the issues which it set out to deal with last fall, I guess it was. Although the proposed new law will tend to move new houses to the center of a property, which Mike mentioned, and that's a good result, it totally ignores the key issue in FEMA zone building, and that is height. It's what we started this study on. It was about height. It wasn't about anything else. It was about height. And there really is nothing in here about height. We all know the issue. You know, the building department over the years has been making the determination that the height limitations are a combination of the village limitations plus the FEMA zone elevation requirements. And by making that administrative decision over and over again, as I understand it, and from what Mr. DePietris has said, in effect, they've created law. And we found that as FEMA base elevations have arisen over time, the new houses are much higher than the established houses, and they basically are invading privacy. They're creating all sorts of issues associated with tall houses being next to smaller houses. I think that the new proposed law is, by being silent on the issue of FEMA elevations as they relate to aggregate height, may at worst effectively codify the building department's rulings, and I think Mr. DePietris just actually said that they did. And at least the proposed law impacts upon a minuscule, or at the least it impacts upon a minuscule number of narrow properties, but will not be accepted by anyone paying attention to the situation as a real overall problem. Now, the other side of it is that there is other cases and other ways of going about this. And we know that the other villages in the East End generally have aggregate height limitations, which are higher. They are codified. And we really haven't seen anything in this discussion that basically has taken a look at or has presented our situation versus the other village situations. And I think that it would really be a good idea for us to follow proper procedure and be thorough in this, since it is an issue that's been under discussion for a year. We ought to put this back to the Planning Commission and really take a look at what the other villages are doing, why it seems to work there, and basically deal what I think is not only a public relations problem, but basically a major irritant to the village, that this issue of height in this law is not being dealt with. I mean, it's a half measure. It's a half measure, and I think we're seeing a consistent pattern of sort of half measures, and then we'll get to the other half of the law the second time. I'm not saying it's not a good procedure, but it isn't one which is very appealing to the members of this, or the residents of this village, who really would like to see complete legislation that deals completely with an issue. I know you've done the pyramids or the sky plane. That's going to appeal or apply to maybe 2 properties in the FEMA zones, maybe more, maybe not many more. It certainly would have stopped 40 Meadow Lane, which would have been fabulous, but we're a year too late on that. That horse has already left the barn. But I think you should really just put this back to the Planning Commission and come back in a month or so with a complete law which basically deals with height as well as just dealing with FEMA in a sort of a haphazard manner. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Good evening. Nice to see you. I'm Philip Howard. I'm a resident of the village. First, I'd like to take issue slightly with what Mr. DePietro said. I don't think this proposal codifies the prior fact of how high buildings are. It codifies a theory, because until a few years ago, before the FEMA elevations got changed, the practice of the buildings department of measuring from FEMA, from sea level, didn't make much difference, because average grade was approximately what FEMA was. So if you look at the houses on either side, which are reasonably of recent construction of 40 Meadow Lane, those are houses plus FEMA, plus 35 feet, but in fact they're a full story shorter than the house at 40 Meadow Lane. I think that I second what Bruce Bachman said. The reality here is we're talking about a major change in the way Southampton houses will look in the future, especially those in the floodplains in or around the beach. It will be very different from the houses of other nearby villages. It may be true that the height limits need to be changed somewhat to accommodate what Mr. Irving said, so ductwork and such, but there are a lot of very big houses on lots where they can spread out. They don't have to be 3 stories tall, that are 2-story houses with roofs, the second story, in the roof. That's a classic design. That's still available with a much lower height limit. It's suggested that by having the sky plane exposure, we won't have houses like 40 Meadow Lane on small 1-acre lots again, and that's a good thing. Although, as Bruce said, it's horses out of the barn. But I actually don't think that would be the effect. This is a photograph taken yesterday of 40 Meadow Lane, taken from more than a quarter mile away on Cooper's Neck Beach. This house happens to be on 1 acre, but if it were on 20 acres, it would still look like this. You don't see any other roofs from this vantage point. And often with beach houses, you do get a perspective that's a long perspective. So then I think the question is, what's the purpose of a height limit? The height limit is not there as an entitlement to be on top of everything. It's there to set an absolute uniform maximum height guideline for the benefit not of that landowner, but of all the surrounding landowners. That's the purpose of the zoning code. And so this proposed legal change will basically allow houses to stick out, sort of like Dracula's teeth, whenever somebody has a new, and create an incentive to create these houses that will stick out just as 40 Meadow Lane does on larger lots. So I think it's important to think again about who the zoning is supposed to protect. And I think it's important for the commission to look at the realities of the FEMA, to look at what kind of houses people can build on a standard lot. I think that's a really important aspect of the planning process. Other villages and the town of Southampton have raised their height limits to accommodate that, but they've raised them to numbers like 42 feet, not 53 feet, which is what this current.
Well, I mean, you're using 53 feet, but that's 53 feet from sea level.
Okay, I'm sorry, 47 feet than from average grade. And so the different villages have different guidelines, but a commission could study what is practical to achieve a house that tries to balance the interests of FEMA and have some certainty of a uniform skyline. The proposal has no certainty because it's whatever FEMA's going to be in the future. And with all due respect, I don't think it studies what's really required and has, as far as I can tell, no respect for the original 35-foot height limit, which by and large has been abided by most of the buildings in this neighborhood, including the new buildings built under the old FEMA guidelines, which is the buildings on either side of it. So I would urge, it is a value judgment about what's best for the village, what's fair for everyone within the zone, what will maximize the value of the property and the ambiance of this incredibly fantastic village. But it's an important change. It's not just doing what's been done in the past, because by codifying this, the buildings are going to be that high.
You take that picture and now apply that picture, a sky plane and a pyramid law to that picture. And what happens to that house? The house is set further back from the road, or it's not as overpowering, and you probably lose that entire half story that's up there because
I'm not sure that's true. If it has a big lot, it centers the property on the lot.
But the reality is that we're having this discussion because of 40 Meadow Lane. That's why we're having the discussion, because
right.
it really brought it to the forefront that there is an issue here, and a big part of that is architecture, and the design of the house and the materials that were used. And I think consistently across, you'll see people that disagreed with that decision. And so if you look at the sky plane and the pyramid law now is on this law is a 33-degree angle, which is even a more restrictive number than in the smaller lots throughout the village, which is a 45-degree angle. Go ahead.
Right, and these are all good points, but they're planning points. I used to teach city planning at Columbia, so I know about planning. And so what one ideally would like to see here is a layout, a book that says, here's what would happen on a beach lot that's this deep with this many acres, the kind of house that would be built. And then you actually can say, here's the impact. You have a kind of a build-out scenario. But what concerns me about this is not that you're doing absolutely the right thing in considering this and what we're going to do about height, is that first the Planning Commission did have rather modest recommendations on height, and this does not follow those. But from my standpoint, more troubling is I don't see the build out of the typical models. Well, what is going to be the effect of this? Because on a big lot, this house is going to be legal, and this house legal on a big lot, I think it's going to look like this, because this is taken from a third of a mile away, and they could own all the land up to here.
But it's also set back further from the road. Okay, it's centered on the property.
Well,
you're talking about a piece of property that's less than 100 feet wide.
I understand that, but this is a picture taken from a quarter mile away.
Look, every time I drive down the road, I have almost the same feeling that you do in reference to that.
Right. And so,
Okay.
so my concern is only that before you make this really important decision for one of the most special villages in this country, that affects the way it looks and affects the values of the property owners all around these, that we understand exactly what this code change will look like, because it isn't simply codifying what lots of people have been doing. It's codifying a theory, not a fact. The fact is changed by the fact that FEMA has gone from 7, 8, 9 feet to 16, 17, and 18 feet. And that has to be, I respectfully submit, that let's look at what that
Yeah.
creates before you vote on it. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. Oh, Bruce, you already, let me get some other people who have it now. Okay. Okay, actually, well, Paul, you know, sorry. I'm just trying to get through everybody at one time, and then we'll go round two.
Paul Travis, Chair of the Planning Commission. So we spent many months, I think since late 2014, looking at the FEMA issues and working with Nelson Pope. They actually presented the plan at several of our public meetings. One thing I should point out is in both the initial study and then the later study, there actually were several drawings that showed how the pyramid law and some of the other provisions would impact the houses along Gin and Meadow Lane. And then at our public meeting on July 2nd, there was a presentation by Nelson Pope and Voorhees of additional analysis they had done in response to comments and public discussion of these findings. Based on this work, the Planning Commission that night recommended some provisions for the elevated area along Gin and Meadow Lane, some of which are slightly different than what's being discussed tonight, so I just wanted to mention those. And the two that I think are important is first on building height. One thing we struggled with over many months is that there is actually a history in this village of very tall buildings along the ocean. So if you go down Gin and Meadow, there are many more three-story buildings than there are in the rest of the village. There are houses that are much higher in the dune than you would otherwise expect. But those are generally on large lots. And so we thought it was important to look at larger lots versus narrow lots in that zone. And the first thing that we understood was if you look at particularly the lots along the ocean, there are no lots of less than 40,000 square feet. So every single lot would be covered by the provision in the village as a whole for 40,000 square feet, which is 35 feet. And it was our thought that for lots that were less wide than 175 feet, that they really should have a base flood elevation plus 1 foot to a height of 30 feet. That we really thought the 35 feet for the narrow lots was quite high. Secondly, one thing that we think is important is that retaining walls are becoming increasingly common as the FEMA guidelines push houses up. And you see many of those along the stretch of Meadow Lane, right around 40 Meadow in some of the houses that were built actually in the last 10 years. These, which are common now in newer construction in that area, create erosion for the houses around them. And therefore, we endorse Nelson Pope's recommendation that all retaining walls be a minimum of 20 feet off the front property line and no more than 3 feet high, so that we don't have the type of street flooding we're seeing in front of some of the newer houses. We also thought it be important to allow pre-1940 structures to be moved on their site if they decide they want to comply with the new FEMA guidelines, which I think will be increasingly common as people deal with insurance issues going forward, in a manner that is most feasibly consistent with the new zoning. So if someone has a pre-1940 house, they want to raise it to try to become consistent with FEMA, we think they should be allowed to move it to the maximum extent to try to be consistent with the new zoning. So I just, I want to say I think the provisions in the law are very important. They are going to be very helpful. I think the pyramid law will have a real impact in this area. But we do think in the narrower lots that we need to look more carefully at the height. Thank you.
Well, with the, and then you talked about the pre-1940
Right.
raising moving,
Right.
but what's your opinion about the houses that are already there? Maybe built in the 1980s or the 90s, and they want to raise, the one property owner had come in to talk about, the ability for them to raise.
I think generally the same theory should apply, and this might be done by a special exception, but I think the same theory should apply, that we know everyone is eventually going to have to comply, and we think there should be a provision which says you can move your house, and what you'll have to show is that you moved it to the maximum extent to comply with the new zoning, understanding in an older house you won't be able to comply completely with the new zoning.
Great.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eric Ruttenberg. I live at 82 Captain's Neck Lane. And I'm new to a lot of what's going on. I've been struck by the construction that's been going on in Southampton. To me, what seems like overdevelopment, frankly. If you look at the picture behind you, for instance, I wonder what that would look like with some of the new building code that is going to be passed, or is considered being passed right now. I think it would change the look of Southampton significantly. I'm concerned about the building height, frankly, and I think if you do not actually have restrictions on complete building height, you're going to end up like people watching a parade. And what happens to the people at the back of the parade is when the people in the front stand on their toes, the people at the back stand on their toes. And you're going to end up with ever higher and higher buildings. And that's going to ruin the look of what is, frankly, a really wonderful town and village. So, in my view, I think that the Planning Commission should really consider carefully whether building height needs to be actually restricted rather than have code here which doesn't seem to have a real restriction in it.
Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet would like to speak on this? Bruce, you want to?
Thank you. I just like to comment, I think, a little bit on some of the comments that you made. This discussion of height in FEMA zones started well before 40 Meadow Lane was anything more than a glimmer in the eye of the owner. We started this, and the commission was, I think, started on the recommendation of Mr. Hattrick at a meeting in April of 2014. 40 Meadow Lane really didn't come into public consciousness until June. And so what we started out to do was really look at FEMA height regulations in the context of all the properties, not just 40 Meadow Lane. 40 Meadow Lane has become a focal point. I think it was Rahm Emanuel who said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And this one's been a bit of a good crisis for us all. And I think the law is proposed very, very carefully and very completely deals with the Meadow Lane property. But it does not deal with the other properties around the village in the FEMA zones of different sizes, and I think it really should. So again, as others are saying tonight, I think we should go back to the drawing boards and do something which is complete, not something which is just sort of a Band-Aid that deals with the most egregious example of the problem that we have associated with height in FEMA zones.
Anyone else want to speak? No?
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
If I understand what Mr. Howard and Mr. Bachman are saying, are you concerned, among other things, that FEMA elevation requirements may change and that will automatically jack this up? And wouldn't we don't have to make this our final resolution. I know there's some concern that, a whole lot of work has gone into it, and it is progress. You can argue that it isn't enough progress, but wouldn't we be smart to adopt this and still pursue the additions to it that would, for instance, if the maximum FEMA goes to 21 feet, maybe we could just say, this is it. We're not going any higher, or just fill me in so that because I don't want this opportunity. Yes, Philip.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you were talking to me. When something is codified, it's very hard to change it. I actually wrote a book about that last year called The Rule of Nobody. Statutes just sort of pile up and nobody ever changes. You pass new laws, you don't get rid of the old ones. So I think it's important, this proposed law takes a current code, which, as Mr. Foster's suggested, is somewhat ambiguous about how you measure the height limit from average grade, fill, et cetera. And it's very explicit. It says now you add FEMA plus 2 feet to it. I don't know why the 2 feet keeps getting added to it, but in any event, it's FEMA plus 2 feet plus the other. That is open-ended. I think it's very hard to go back from that. Once somebody says, I've got an entitlement, the law said I could do it, it's going to be very hard to backtrack on it. I think it's really the other surrounding communities, you don't have to do what they did, you're an independent board, have set explicit height limits. I think it's really important to understand what buildings need today, the height limit, what people need. You're not going to trailer camp on stilts, or whatever. But it's important to know what that is and what the meaning of it is. And to my way of thinking, it's very important not to have an open-ended law that's passed tonight, because I think it's going to be very hard ever to take it back. And that is the history of laws generally.
But aren't we taking back laws that already exist with what we're proposing to do tonight?
No, you're just adding to it. The only thing you're adding on top of the current zoning code a provision that codifies adding FEMA to the 35-foot height limit. So you're adding to that. And you're adding a sky plane, which would solve the 40 Meadow Lane small lot problem.
Well, I think the sky plane and the pyramid law have an impact on not only just the small lots, but I also know there's some examples of larger lots around. And they move the buildings into the center of the property.
Into the center, and it'd be important to see what they all look like. But even if it changed it, given the current FEMA, my view, and I think the view of the association, is it's a mistake to have an open-ended height limit, because the dynamic of building is everybody wants more. Everybody wants as much as they can get. And I think it's important to set a limit. That's what zoning is for. That's what all the other landowners, with all due respect, are entitled to, in my view. And so I would have a height limit, whatever it is, that is studied to be the right height limit, and not pass this and then try to claw back something.
But if you read the Nelson Pope study, there's nothing in there that caps off maximum height ever in these zones. It talks about pyramid law, it talks about sky plane, it talks about making adjustment for a narrow lot to
175-foot lot, right.
30 feet above BFE plus 1, but
right.
We've gone to BFE plus 2 because it's consistent with what's happened before, B, it's consistent with the flood insurance piece and down there.
Down
in the flood zones.
Okay, I'm not. Other villages don't seem to have that view. But
okay. Well,
okay.
I mean that's.
I think there's.
But if we drive around and look at some of the other villages, you'll see a lot of homes that are on stilts. You'll see a lot of flat roof homes around. If you drive around, we see some of the most beautiful homes in the entire world. And
It's really important, we can all agree, that
Yeah.
we want Southampton to maintain
Yeah.
the ambiance that it has.
I think we're all on
Okay,
the same
so
page.
we're all on the same page here, right? So nobody wants Southampton to look like West Hampton. You know, but the study, with all due respect, and I thought the Nelson, Pope, and Voorhees recommendations were modest, but this proposal doesn't include the proposal for 175-foot lots.
Well, there's a lot of issues around that, and for me personally, because I'm going to take in the flood zone, I'm going to say I'm going to use a 175-foot wide piece of property. Now I'm going to classify that as a narrow lot, and then I'm going to cap the height out at 30 feet above BFE +2. Okay, so nowhere else in the village, a 175-foot wide lot is at a 30-foot height on some of those properties. So to me, I look at it personally and I say, is that fair?
Well,
And-
without fair to whom? So 30 feet plus 16 feet plus 2 feet is 48 feet. On a normal
Minus-
beach lot
minus-
above sea level, 48 feet, that's about 41 feet, give or take, 40, 41, 42 feet above average grade. So that's the,
In certain areas, but in
Yeah.
other areas, it's 30 feet above average grade. And then if you study the report and you look at Meadow Lane, not everything on Meadow Lane has a 16-foot. Some of them are 10, some are 11 feet. They're different areas.
But I think this discussion proves the point, which is that you're making an important change, and it happens to be an open-ended one, about height in this village. If you go drive around the village of Southampton in the FEMA floodplain area, you will by and large have houses of a certain size and by and large of two certain designs. They're flat-roofed houses that are modern, some of which are quite nice, that comply with the 27-foot height limit plus whatever FEMA was at the time. And you've got houses that are either 1.5 stories or on some big lots, 2.5 stories, where the half story is built into the roof. That's the character. I submit that whatever change you make here should be consistent with that character. And that requires a somewhat more, I think, you have concerns, I think valid concerns, but we ought to see what these things create, what the zones create. What would a height limit actually create in these zones? You probably do need to change the height. I haven't seen the study yet that shows what it's going to look like. And I think, with all due respect, it's just too important to the village not to make this vote until you really understand what the changes are going to be over time to how this special part of the village looks.
Well, what I would submit to you is that, part of this study made the recommendation to do the pyramid and the sky plane,
Right.
which I think ultimately are some of your most restrictive. And there's also a piece in that, in the study, they talk about the unintended consequences of a lot of this stuff and the impact it's going to have on architecture, and that's a concern. And I know that there's a lot of great information in this study that should be actually developed as guidelines that we should be building across the entire village on certain parts of it. And there's parts of it that relate to lot coverage that I think in our previous law that we have with lot coverage in the GFA are components that could be actually applied there and looked at across the entire village. And we were looking at what's the most effective way. It's an in-depth study. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. We haven't really had the chance for the professionals to really sit in that are actually working in the village to see what impact is going to have on architecture. And my personal view was always, let's go after the pyramid law and let's after the sky plane. And then what that does is it'll force these homes into the center of the lot, and we wouldn't end up with a 40 Meadow Lane.
Can I just ask
Yeah.
one thing? Pardon me, Mayor. You keep referring to this open-ended height or lack of restriction. Now, is that because of the potential for FEMA to change their?
That's it.
Sure, it
Okay,
changes
all right.
it.
Just so I'm clear on that, which is, you're right, that's accurate. But you've also stated that the danger we have as a board, as a governing board, is that we won't be able to mitigate that going down the road. And I actually submit to you that we can do that, because we just did that by implementing a 30, 33, and 35 limitations on height. So while that part may very well be something we have absolutely no control over, we've just actually proven with our last meeting, we can control, to some degree, the ultimate height of the building. We just did it. So I don't think that we're completely pigeonholed into not controlling that down the road, but I think somewhere we've had to start, we've extended this to some point. And Bruce, to what you said earlier on another point about moving on it and moving on it, well, we're actually moving on something here.
Right.
You know, I mean, we're actually doing something you just pleaded on another case. So I think there's still some flexibility, and it's not as open-ended as you imply, I think.
Okay. So then accepting that, what you're voting on today is the ability to create, in the FEMA flood zones, homes that are 53 and 54 feet above sea level, or 46, 47 feet above average grade, just to be clear, above average grade, which is a full story taller than the surrounding buildings. It is not necessary on most conforming lots to get the floor area to build it that high. They can build them out as well as high. They don't need to be an effective, a three-story building. So you will get buildings in the middle of the lot, which is better, and not on a small non-conforming lot, of which there are very few, but that's better. Thank you, I wish we'd done it. Wish we'd done it a year ago. But you're going to get houses that look like the picture that I just showed you. There's nothing in this lot, in this new law, that prevents that house. And so I think what you will, what you're hearing is a concern that homes that are that high, that are 47 feet above natural grade versus 35 feet above natural grade, are perhaps too high, except maybe in really large lots or something, and that you ought to really look at what the effect of this is going to be, going forward before you enact it, because I think it will be hard to claw that back. You may be able to stop the future rise in FEMA, so it may be true, but you're basically codifying that, and there are not that many houses that high right now. So you're basically saying that's okay if it's on a big lot. And so what I'm submitting to you is, in the Southampton Association, is before you make that choice, really understand what that's going to look like in the middle of the lot. It may well be better before you do it.
But if you take and apply, and Mr. Hattrick had said it to us earlier, is that if we took 40 Meadow Lane and we applied the pyramid law, that's the 33-degree angle and the sky plane, really kind of what impact would that have on that house? And would it have that visual impact as you're heading west on Cooper? Because it would have.
Heading east.
Sorry, heading east.
Right.
Sorry. Heading east on.
Hey, you're from Tennessee.
I know, exactly. Hey, part of you.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, that's okay. Hey, you were down there.
You like
too.
me, you're just married into the town, right?
Yeah, we married up. So he's an Oak Ridge boy, so yeah. It's okay, University of Tennessee guys here.
Yeah. Hey, go Big Orange.
Yeah, that's right. But I figured it out one day. But if you look at that lot right there, and you take that and you apply the Skype, I would be curious to see what happened in the visual impact there. So
right, that building couldn't be built.
Right.
The really interesting question to me is, if that building had 5 acres, could it be built? That's a really interesting, and I don't know the answer to that. I
But
think the answer to that is yes.
But
And it would have the same visual impact.
Well, I would,
Well, maybe
I would,
not,
I would
depending on
disagree
where
with
that
you.
5 acres
I mean, if
is.
it's,
So
if it's,
that's
if it's,
all.
if that, if that,
It
if that
wouldn't have the
house,
impact on the neighbors.
but if that
That's
Oh,
house
yes,
is,
it would.
but if it's five.
Well, I'd like to
let's-
see that study.
sideline
But if it's,
variances and that, 'cause
if it's
a narrow
five,
lot.
it's 5 acres, okay, and then it's, 200 feet off the road.
Well, first of all, I don't know what the impact is on lots of, however deep these lots are, of the new sky exposure point. But clearly, if you own from this piece of property to here, which would be probably 30 or 40 acres, if it could be built, it's still gonna look like that. It could be, maybe it's sitting here rather than here, sitting in the middle of a lot. I don't happen to know, and I haven't seen the study that shows me what happens, whether it's limited because of the depth of the lot, or how much it's limited. But I think that's an important question to answer.
But
Could
the-
this be
but-
built if it had a
But
big
the,
lot?
but the depth of the lot, the height of the lot, the location of the lot, because you're talking about is in that location right there. That's the highest floodplain area that we have in the village. It was, it is, it's,
Well, I mean,
it's 60.
It goes on for a long time.
Yeah, but it's the highest
Right.
point right there. You're also talking about one of the very lowest natural grade to sea level areas right there. So you have a greater separation between the natural grade and where the base floodplain elevation is. So if you take that house and you place it on a lot that's further down Meadow Lane that has a not a 16-foot, but an 11-foot, and it's got the natural grade is higher, and that house is set 200 feet off the road, or even 100 feet off the road.
Okay,
yeah.
and maybe you're right, but I haven't seen the study that showed it. And all I know is that Southampton Village, if it passes this, will be dramatically out of sync with the surrounding villages.
But I think the study that we have from Nelson Pope does talk about all of this stuff, and Mr. Travis was up here earlier referencing that study when it talks about looking at sky planes and pyramid laws and the impact that's set. And those are all, and so this house, I mean, we all agree, it couldn't be built with and I think by taking the steps that we're taking right now is actually a step in the right direction. Now, there are things that he's talked about that we're retaining walls that need to be looked at, and there's a lot of stuff, lot coverage components to it, and definition of what lots are, and how do we want to just apply it in a FEMA zone, do we want to apply it across the village? So there's a lot of questions that have to be answered, and this is almost I've used this before, the low-hanging fruit component of this, which is an easier piece that would prevent some of the homes and force homes into the center of the lots as they're being built.
Okay, all right, I don't want to monopolize this, you have a decision to make.
I think it's a great.
I just want to say, this is an important decision. It's an important legislative decision. We don't have very many homes of that height that have been built.
Right.
This law would make them legal on many lots. And what I haven't seen, and there is a certain crisis of confidence arising out of the performance of the other boards with regard to this piece of property, you understand. And we'd like to come and talk about that separately, including conflicts of interest, both legal and business, and other things that we think are really dangerous for the confidence and the overall civic character of the community. So we'll talk about those. But this is the public hearing, the first public hearing on a height change that legislates height of this size on certain lots with a sky exposure of uncertain effect. And all that we're asking is that it be studied more so that we understand exactly what the effect is going to be in the build-out. You're suggesting that it's going to be fine, and maybe it is, but I haven't seen the pictures. There's a long swatch of land that will be affected by this, and what are those houses going to look like? I can't answer that question. And the report doesn't. It's sort of abstract. It doesn't really answer the question. So what we're asking this evening is that not to get delayed permanently, because we think height does need to get resolved and clarified. There is this uncertainty about height. But that it be studied sufficiently so that we know what we're getting in for before we vote for it.
Well, here's what I would say is that, a non-vote tonight, the moratorium ends, and then the way the laws were before, which generated the whole everything, all apply.
Right.
And so, from my standpoint, I would rather be voting in favor of a pyramid law and a sky plane to do that, and then continue to look at other
Great, so
parts of
then
this.
I would respectfully suggest that you say, as a partial solution to this problem, we would like to enact this, and it will have a one-year sunset, and we're going to come back and revisit this issue in 1 year and look at what studies have shown to see if that was the right decision or whether we need to modify it sooner. And then have it be specifically on the table for study. In the meanwhile, have an effect. Because
It's a very large and very in-depth study that has to be worked out and has to be discussed, and we paid a lot of money for that study too, and invested a lot of time and effort, and I don't think it's something that's going to be placed off to the side, but I do think that we,
well, it shouldn't
personally,
be put off to the side, but this doesn't include, as you pointed out, the 175-foot restriction and, lot restriction. So there are other issues that the trustees need to address on this really important issue. And I just think, respectfully, Smith, you ought to keep working on it and have whatever you do tonight be consistent with continuing to work on it.
Well, I think that, but I think that the two proposals on there are consistent with recommendations that came from this study. They're not complete.
They're not
all the
complete.
recommendations.
And they don't
They're not all
include
the
any, they don't include any height limits. It's
But
FEMA
no-
plus 35 plus 2.
But nowhere in the study does it say max height on a lot. That's,
Okay,
that's-
if the
yeah.
study concluded we shouldn't have max height on a lot, then we will, at another public hearing, bring hordes
I'm sure.
of landowners
Yeah.
here to say, we own land, we're in the zone, your job is in part, and we made part, to protect our interests, and therefore we want height limits. And so I mean, this is why we're having the public hearing. I mean, this is.
I know. I mean, no, I think this is a great discussion. I really do, and
Just want to ask you, would you agree that, let's say that what we're proposing to do tonight, if we adopt this, that let's say we achieved 60% of perfection, whether it's 60, 70, 50, whatever. But I think from what you said, this is better than where we were or where we are, right? And then can't we do just what you suggested and pursue it even more? I hate, because I thought you were saying to me that if we don't do this tonight, then that's the end of it. Can we still do it a month from now, or?
we could, but the moratorium ends.
Let me just say, there is a dispute that never got fully resolved. It got discussed by a court in the context of a preliminary injunction. There's a dispute about whether the buildings inspector has authority to add FEMA legislatively to the 35-foot height limit. What this does is legislate that. So it doesn't simply codify where we are, because I think if there were another building like 40 Meadow Lane, people would be a lot better organized, and you would have a very different legal challenge. Because personally, I mean, Mr. Foster knows I disagree with him on this, I don't think that there is an empowerment under the current code simply to add whatever FEMA says to it. Now, but a court would have to decide that. That's not up to me to decide. So I don't think it just codifies where we are and improves it. I think there's a legitimate disagreement over whether, particularly with the new FEMA guidelines that go well above average grade. Remember, until a few years ago, all the new houses built with FEMA plus 35 feet ended up being roughly 35 feet above natural grade, because that's what FEMA was. FEMA was from sea level, and it would take it up to natural grade. So it wasn't really that much of a change. It's only when FEMA changed a couple of years ago to have these 16-foot limits that all of a sudden you get these huge heights. And the question is, should you codify it? That's what you're proposing to do today, is to codify it so it's undisputably clear that you can build a building this high. And what you're hearing from some members of the public and landowners is that, you know, we would like you to be somewhat more cautious before you do that, and begin to build in some of the restrictions like the ones that were proposed in the Voorhees report. You know, maybe of a certain size, you have a height limit of a certain lot size, et cetera.
But again, I go back to that lot, because you keep referencing it, and if you take that lot and you apply a pyramid law and a sky plane to it, the house that we look at doesn't get built.
No, it becomes a beach bungalow, which is probably what it, you know, it never should have gotten torn down. The original house never should have gotten torn down. It's another issue. But you're absolutely right about that. But it's still a big house, even on a big lot.
Well,
Okay.
you know, well, respectfully, I would disagree on that. I think it would be, you know, less impact on the neighbors and the neighbor. I mean, that's a visually overpowering home. It's a you know, very overpowering to the neighborhood, the street, everything. I mean, we all agree.
Pulling back for a second, we're interested in good zoning. We're not interested in stopping progress, stopping development. We're interested in good zoning. We're interested in zoning that people understand. We're interested in zoning that protects what we all agree is this unbelievably valuable ambiance of this community. I think we're all want the same. We're not trying to just say stop every house. So you've heard our concerns and our requests, and I'd like, whatever you do tonight, I hope that we can continue the discussion and continue the study so that we get to results that we understand what they're going to be, and at least if there are value judgments to be made, you know, they're made clearly with all the facts and knowing what we're getting in for, and then, you know, and that's, you know, you're elected to make those judgments.
And that's what, I mean, Mr. Travis is agreeing with us. We've got a lot of work to do on this, but yeah, I don't think this is not over. It's just, you know.
Is this a step forward but not forward enough? Is that what you're saying?
I think codifying FEMA plus the height is a step back. That's my view.
But we're there now, right? I mean,
No, we're not there. We're there by interpretation.
we're not, yeah,
We're not. So codifying it, in my view, is a step back.
really.
The sky plane exposure is a step forward. So I think there's good things in this proposal, and again, I hope we can continue to have the discussion. And I wish I understood better, as I'm standing here, I don't, what the impact of this really will be on the lots in the community, which is one of the things that I think we all should look at and continue to have discussions about.
I won't.
You think I would do better if I were a man? I am absolutely appalled at the way I've been treated in this village. I'm known throughout the country for my previous careers. I have 2 law degrees. I have now told you that it is illegal to pass a zoning amendment without an environmental review. If the code that you've been enforcing here since 2005 had been submitted to an environmental review, we would not have that code. It would never have passed. Now, there's an elephant in this room, and that's your business center plan. And I think preventive medicine is necessary. You voted on that plan, which calls for a hotel, for houses in the village, a business center with stores and then apartments above. And there has been no environmental impact statement. I asked about that to Paul yesterday. He says, I don't want to have that conversation. I can understand that. I do want to have that conversation tonight because there are more important people here than generally, because unfortunately, our residents have become so tuned out by the way things have been done, particularly in the ARB, in the planning board. I haven't had enough experience with you as trustees to know how it goes here, except you do ignore the points of law that I bring you. And they're serious points of law. And if you don't pay attention to them, maybe the Department of Environmental Protection will. And some of the people in New York who have done work for you, but not this particular case. That business center needs a serious review. Have you really polled the people in this village whether they want a hotel? What's it going to be, a Radisson or a Holiday Inn in the business center? Do we want that? I don't know. Do you want that? Do you really want apartments on top? What's it going to do to the traffic? Has anyone examined that? I'd be curious to know who voted for it, because I think the trustees voted for that plan. It's a nightmare. Yesterday, we were presented with a $33 million sewage treatment plan that we wouldn't need if the 205 zoning code hadn't been shoved through without minutes, without any legal some underpinning at all. And certainly this village center would never pass, but at least give it a try. You're obligated to do that. You're obligated to have an environmental protection review, full one, not a self-serving saying this will not have any environmental impact. No impact on traffic? A hotel?
Well, we're talking about the,
I know, but,
elevator, with FEMA.
yes, but we have just talked a great deal for a long time about one
our-
house on the beach,
No, well,
and therefore I feel free.
But that's part of,
I
that's part
understand
of the
that.
law.
I feel free to bring this to your attention because I don't know if I can come to every meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else from the public would like to speak? Yes, about the height of elevated building and the local law.
Yes, this is about that.
Okay.
My question is to all of you, what is your intent with this law? What is the intent to be as conservative as possible relative to the other villages and towns here on Long Island out in the East End?
I think you have to, well, conservative in what way? You know, do you want?
Do we want to be more liberal in
do you
our
want-
building practices
Well,
or not?
I mean, the question is, you know, what are we trying to achieve here? Do we want to be all flat roofed homes? Do we want to be homes that are on stilts? Do we want to be homes that are one story down on the ocean that drive down property values? I mean, that's you know, that's an ultra conservative approach to something. Or do we want to look at?
Ultra conservative to drive down property values?
Well, that's what you're asking.
Why would we want to do that?
But if you get into doing severe height restrictions on homes that are in FEMA, part of the reason why people buy property down is they want to be able to look out over the dunes and they want to be able to see, and they pay big numbers down there. So if we go in and we get very restrictive on certain things, then I think it drives down property values in this area right here. That's
But
my
what
own
about
personal-
existing property?
Well, existing properties, if they come and they go to tear them down, I think it's going to drive down
But
because
doesn't it-
they
isn't
won't
it-
be able to build what's there.
I guess my question is, have you studied what all of the other towns have and how your proposed regulations would be compared to those, town
We
by
have-
town?
I mean, Mr. Travis
by
from
town.
the Planning Commission,
Every town.
That's what we did
Yes.
last meeting.
And how do we compare?
well, Paul, you want to answer that, Paul?
Sure.
My name's Eric Ruttenberg. Ruttenberg.
I hate to put Paul on the spot here, but I'm going to.
So we've actually, you know, in our zoning here for the last 10 years, we've taken a somewhat different approach. So in Southampton Town, most of the regulation is about height, and they don't regulate much else. And so, as the mayor pointed out, what you're seeing.
East Hampton, what does East Hampton do?
Give me one thing at a time, sorry. So what you're seeing along the ocean in the town, and you've seen it in Sagaponic and Bridgehampton, you're now seeing it very much in Wainscott, is flat roofed houses to get as much square footage as they can along the ocean because they really can't go up.
Because there's a height restriction.
Right, so you get these very large flat-roofed houses, and so that, and now that's not necessarily so bad because most of those areas were farmland until 20, 30 years ago, so there's no existing pattern. What, you know, I understand a lot of like these concerns. One thing I would say is we spent a lot of time, and as did Nelson Pope, studying the existing pattern of houses in Southampton. And I don't want to cause any controversy, but I do differ with the idea that we've had all two-story houses along the ocean. It's just not accurate. And if you look at Gin Lane, you see lots of three-story houses. You look at Meadow Lane, you see three. So we've had this history in Southampton of very large houses along the ocean that don't necessarily exist in every town in the East End. So I'm not sure you would take what they've done in the town of Southampton, or even to some extent in the village of East Hampton, and you would apply that exactly here because our physical pattern is different. I actually, you know, as I said tonight, we actually think in the narrow lots, we do need to be a little more careful about height. But I would just say our physical pattern of development historically in Southampton actually is different from the other towns. So the way that we wanted to deal with it was to really try to control architecture, not just height and size. And so there are a number of things being done here. There's a pyramid law, there are setbacks, there's a number of things you will need to do that would not allow a house like 40 Meadow Lane to exist on either a large lot or a small lot in the future. I'm not saying it's going to solve everything, but so we have taken a different approach. We've done a form-based zoning versus what a lot of other towns in the East End have done, which is really just regulate height and size and virtually nothing else.
Okay, I understand that. I guess my question would be the same as Philip's, which is, I would think you'd need to do a study to really understand what you're doing and what the impact would be all along the FEMA zone.
We did that.
Again, we did do the study.
But what
We
what
could do more.
each property would look like with the proposed laws that you have.
I would sorry, but I would just say that what the study does have is typical large and small lots and how the rules come into effect. And those drawings are attached to the two studies, and when they came again on July 2nd, they also had a number of drawings which showed again what the impact would actually be on the large and small lots of the proposed zoning.
Because the cost of taking each individual lot and looking at each individual lot would be significant. So that's why we took.
But it's more significant the impact that it has
Yeah,
on the village. I mean, that's a priceless impact.
But that's why you take averages. That's why you take some average
No, but
lots.
the problem with averages is that they're average, and there are going to be different places, and it's going to have a different impact. And I think that this is an incredibly important decision you're making tonight.
Okay. Bruce.
Can I bring some facts in?
Sure.
Which I lack.
No, not you, Eric. Just to realize, we're not talking about just 40 Meadow Lane and then really big lots.
Right.
The law which you are proposing would permit a 40 Meadow Lane if there were 30 feet on each side of that house. We've done a calculation, and we tried to figure out, in other words, we tried to solve for how wide you would have to go when a 33-foot angle, 5 feet above the plane. And there's only been one calculation, and the gentleman's not here, but although you know him, Neil Smith, who worked over the weekend to figure that out. And he figured that someplace between 30 and 35 feet of side lot, with a 5 feet up and a 33-degree angle, would permit a 40 Meadow Lane to be built just the way it is. So you have to think that we're not just talking about big lots and small lots, we're talking about something in between. And anything outside of that 30 feet on either side is not touched at all by this law. I think the second thing I'd like to say is we've been hearing a lot about codification of the sort of FEMA, let's add FEMA to the rest of the height. That seems to be something which and I'm proposing a bit of a compromise here, since I see little harm in the rest of what's being done. I mean, what the heck, let's take that, the sky plane thing that we've got. Can we just take a bit of time and see if you can write this in a way in which it does not codify the FEMA as something absolute that we find acceptable? And basically break this down into its parts so we accomplish what we want, take the small step that Richard said we're taking, but let's not encapsulate or incorporate anything into law or bring it into law that we think might have unfortunate results in the future.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments? Mark?
Mark Schiffer, I'm with a member of the Planning Commission, and like just to add just a couple of points to what Paul mentioned before, and I would like to maybe suggest that you add to this resolution or to this the proposed law that the building department develops a specific application for elevating building, where that will include specific requirements, both in terms of presentation, design, specific requirements as to the impact on the infrastructure, specifically on when it's on Meadow Lane, where Meadow Lane is only at 3 feet and the houses are going to be elevated 10 feet. And the septic systems all need to be also raised in those areas, creating walls on each side of Meadow Lane. So I think it should be, and elevating buildings has specific requirements in the New York State Building Code, in the various flood design components. So I think a special application and maybe a review process should be incorporated into the law, and the Planning Commission would be glad to help the building department develop such application.
Okay. Well, I think they do that now. It's all.
That'd take a lot of detail work to do that.
Yeah. So. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Comments from the board members here?
Said them already.
Mike, you got any?
Well, the comment that I'd make is a couple of things. This wasn't we didn't pull these numbers out of the sky and all of a sudden say, this is what we want to do. The Planning Commission worked diligently for numerous years on this. It's been a discussion among all the trustees. We have looked at different lots. We have looked at the larger lots, smaller lots. We looked at specific buildings along the beach. So this isn't something that just came up real quickly. And two, going forward, I think we are definitely better off starting at a level with a law that gives us the sky planes, centers the buildings, gives the ability to build a reasonable design house with pitch roofs that we see so much in the village. And without a doubt, this discussion needs to continue. I mean, there are a lot of other aspects. There's a lot of architectural aspects that got to be reviewed, that should be reviewed. So I don't think that voting on this issue ends and makes it so that we can't change the height at all. So I think it's a very important thing, and it certainly hasn't been taken lightly.
Bill, do you have any further comments?
Just, along the lines of what Michael is saying, it seems to me that this is a good step forward. It's just that the public, I think correctly, thinks that we should take some further steps. And if we don't do this, what happens to this? Now, what do we do if we don't pass this? Where are we then?
If you don't pass this law, the result would be basically that we're in the same place without any pyramid or sky plane law. As I mentioned at the outset, sections 1 and 2 of the proposed local law don't change the existing zoning code as interpreted by the building department for many years. It's just clarifying that by putting it into the law. If we didn't do that and just left things the way they are, the building department's interpretation would continue. Height would be measured from the same place, base flood plus 2, and you wouldn't have a pyramid law. So, and remember, we're at a point where, as we talked about maybe a month and a half or 2 months ago, the moratorium expires 2 days from now. And it takes time to go through the process of a local law amending the zoning code. We had to start this process back in June by working up a draft local law. We couldn't wait until today, because then you'd have to go through the whole public hearing process. So a tentative decision was made to prepare this draft local law, introduce it at a public meeting, and schedule it for a public hearing, et cetera, so that we would be in a position, if we chose to adopt it tonight, so that there'll be pyramid sky plane requirements in effect when the moratorium expires. Otherwise, you have what you have now without any sky plane or pyramid law. This local law is not by any stretch of the imagination. You'll remember from our discussions a couple of months ago. This is not intended to be a final end product addressing everything. There's a lot of stuff in that Planning Commission report on architecture, on other things that has to be looked at, considered, decided whether to utilize it as guidelines for the ARB, whether to implement it through some kind of a local law, et cetera. There is the grading and fill requirements. There's a lot of stuff on that in the Planning Commission study. Paul mentioned retaining walls tonight. There's a whole lot of stuff in there in that Planning Commission thing, some of which we have questions about. We didn't, those reports were drafted by Nelson Pope and presented to the Planning Commission. For example, they started off with defining narrow lot, I think, as maybe less than 100 feet, something like that. And then more recently, it was put in as less than 175 feet. We have questions about what's the right number to pick, and if we're going to put in a special requirement based on, the width of a lot. There's a lot of information in there that needs to be looked at, considered, vetted publicly, et cetera, et cetera. How long would it take to draft a local law to cover all that? Quite some time if we were going to try to cover it all in one fell swoop. Certainly not something that's likely to go through a public hearing process without questions, possible changes, et cetera. Literal impossibility to have anything adopted before the moratorium expires, or even for months thereafter. Remember, it took us 9 months. It was 9 months ago when a moratorium went in effect. It took us 9 months to get this far. And, so this is a starting point, and that's all it's intended to be, to get. And by the way, although there's been some references tonight that you're not dealing with height, sky plane pyramid law requirements are a type of height regulation. They're specifically in our code under the category of height regulations. So by putting in sky plane pyramid law requirements, you are addressing height. You may not be addressing it fully or to the extent that some people would like you to, but it is a height regulation. So you are, if you adopt this local law, you're establishing some height regulations that would immediately go into effect while you consider anything and everything else that's in that study. You don't adopt this, it could be 9 months from now before you have another local law. During those 9 months, more houses built. I don't want to use a wrong example or anything, but people have mentioned 40 Meadow Lane as an example. If you don't adopt some kind of a law, 40 Meadow Lane could go in other places. So this is a starting point to protect neighborhoods by imposing some height restrictions. And actually, I should mention that in one respect, this law is more restrictive than what's in the Nelson Pope, the Planning Commission papers. Their side yard sky plane restriction would have been less restrictive than what's in this law. The side yard sky plane suggestion that was in there was to measure it from 5 feet above BFE. Under this law, the side yard sky plane is measured from 10 feet above BFE, still the same 33 degrees. So it doesn't have the overall 30-foot height suggestion that was in there for narrow lots, because when we talked about it, we really felt we didn't have enough information yet to be able to justify that, and that rather than, that's something we can get and look at, but in the interim, let's have a more restrictive side yard sky plane, measure it from 10 feet above BFE. So we took...
Isn't it we're measuring from 5 feet above BFE, not 10.
Yes, I'm sorry. This law has the more restrictive side yard sky plane measuring it from 5 feet, rather than the less restrictive measuring it from 10 feet, yes. So in one sense, we're more restrictive than what's in the Planning Commission Nelson Pope status as of the moment. So we took what we were completely comfortable with and that we felt that it could be completely justified out of that to get it into a local law, to go through the public hearing process so that we can have accomplished something in the 9 months since we put in a moratorium. There's a lot more to look at. It's going to take a long time to, go through that process and complete it. Local laws aren't developed overnight, and so I think this is properly characterized as a first step, making progress, and you didn't want to do something that might adversely impact the architecture and character of the village. And so, we need more information on that before we can come to some conclusion as to whether we should change the 35 feet to something less. But in the meantime, we have a front yard sky plane, which we don't have now. We have we have a side yard sky plane, which we don't have now, and which will be more restrictive than what has come out of the study so far. So, you can debate what was meant by codifying, what is not meant by codifying, et cetera, but from a practical point of view, there is no change in the way that the existing law is administered at the moment. It's entirely up to you whether you make some change in the future. You're free to do so.
That's the important thing, that we're not painting ourselves into a corner. And if that other issue of codification, we can attack that next, can't we?
You're not painting yourself into a corner. There are some people who don't want you to adopt this local law because they're afraid that once you adopt it, you'll push it aside and move on to something else. Well, yeah, that can happen, but you know, that's not a reason not to take some step that we're all comfortable with at the moment. So, I think that pretty much summarizes the comments that I wanted to make. I think somebody asked me a question, I'm not sure.
Well said, Councilman.
Did I answer it?
Yes.
Now to hear from you.
I mean, I think, go back to use Bruce's words, time is of the essence. We do have a moratorium expiring here, and we're trying to take advantage of that. It really is the basis here.
So, do we have any further comment from board members? Or any further comment from the public? Yes. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'd like to take action on this.
Okay, first, a resolution. Whereas the proposed local law entitled "A Local Law Amending Chapter 116 of the Village Code with respect to height of elevated buildings" is designed to protect the environment by establishing front yard and side yard skyplane requirements applicable to elevated buildings, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby finds that this local law will not have any significant adverse impact on the environment.
Motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then there would be a motion to enact this proposed local law as local law number 5 of 2015.
Have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second?
And you need a roll call vote
Roll
on
call
that.
vote. Trustee Az?
Aye.
Trustee Irving?
Aye.
Mayor Epley?
Aye.
Trustee Hattrick?
Aye.
So moved.
Okay. You guys want to stick around for the rest of the meeting? I'd love to have you guys, so. Paul, on behalf of the village board and the planning commission, thank you for the work that you've done on this so far. And we have a lot more work to do.
Right.
But I appreciate your comments and your professionalism and that the efforts that you put forth in the village so far on this.
Can you address this particular issue that is being brought up here by Mr. Edwards and by Mr. Bachman on height, particularly in your future pursuits?
Yes,
Yes.
very definitely.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you
Okay.
very much, guys.
Thanks, Paul. All right, communications to the board here. Okay,
We have a special guest tonight.
we do.
Special guest.
Yep.
Special guest.
Mr. Foster.
Oh. Put a jacket on.
Brenda, again, if you want to send me a draft. If you want to send me a draft to look at of. Oh, you want me to send it to you?
So, you're representing the class of 65 BC.
That's about it. This is pretty basic. The high school class, Southampton High School class, 1965, yes, 50 years ago, asked me to represent them on a request. And as it goes, I have been asked by my fellow classmates of the class of 1965 to ask for permission to use the Cooper's Beach facility, the covered deck and bathrooms only, for use as an initial meeting place for our 50th graduation anniversary celebration. The request is for the evening, Saturday, September 19th, 2015, 5 to 8 p.m. Again, this use is for initial meeting place on the above referenced weekend during our 50th graduation anniversary celebration. Thank you for your consideration is very much appreciated. And I verified with Steve, or Steve verified with me, that the muster, fire department muster, is the weekend of the 12th, because we didn't want conflict with that. So,
And, it's after the summer season and the restrictions around parking are no longer in effect at that point in time.
Right.
There's no bonfire being done or anything
no
like
bonfire
that, so-
or drinks, it's just initial conversation when we meet. And
Yeah.
could we raise,
Party isn't
elevate the
over.
deck a couple of feet?
Heard you were burning your principal.
Thank you. Aware of the
So,
rules.
so I'd like to make a motion to authorize the Southampton High School class, proudly represented by Mr. Jonathan Foster, authorized to use Cooper's Beach facility in accordance with the letter dated August 13th, 2015.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We
Great.
appreciate that.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for putting a jacket on for that presentation.
Could I just say one more thing? I just want to make it appropriate time to thank all you board members and Steve's hard work, and Brenda everybody's involved here for getting us on the second floor. I mean, the consideration and the village guys, the work they did, it's amazing. They really came, and you guys really came through for us. It's so much more pleasant, and we still have our fights and things up there.
It looks good.
It's really it's a nice workspace, and I think you did a great job for us, so thank you
It's
very
an
much.
effective use, so it's great. Thanks, John.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for everything that you do, too. It's very, very much appreciated.
All right, item 2 is from the Southampton Soccer Club. The fall soccer season upon us. Southampton Soccer Club would like to use Downs Family Park for training and gameplay for the upcoming fall season of Long Island Junior Soccer Travel Team Play. On behalf of the Southampton Soccer Club, I would like to request permission to use the Downs Family Park soccer fields beginning from week of August 31st through November 28th from 4 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. during the weekdays, and on weekends from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for gameplay. An updated copy of the SSC Limited Certificate of Insurance will be forwarded to your office in the beginning of September when the policy is renewed. As always, thank you very much for your consideration. If you require any further information, don't hesitate to call my office. Tim Rumpf, President.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the Southampton.
Can I just ask a question? This doesn't conflict with the youngsters using this for soccer, does it?
This is the youngsters.
This is.
I didn't want to find out that
No, it's not
the
John's
old goat
50th
said, first
reunion.
amendment.
Not allowed.
No, this is,
I got a grandson who'll kill me.
no, well, I mean, my wife and I started this.
Good, great
So-
idea, please.
So, yeah, yeah, so I love this, so. So I'd like to make a motion to authorize the Southampton Soccer Club to utilize the Downs Family Park in accordance with their letter dated August 11, 2015.
Second? All in favor?
I remember walking those fields with Mayor Murtha, and all they had was a baseball field up there, and talking about putting soccer fields up here.
Great idea.
And then he allowed us to do it, and then we had some of the condominium people came and wanted it shut down, and I filled the room up with kids in uniforms.
Got it.
And they're still playing that.
There you go.
And I think the condominium guys, sometimes they go over and watch them, so.
Resolutions, item 1, resolve the reading of the minutes for the work session July 21st, 2015 be dispensed with, and those minutes be accepted as filed by the village administrator, and the actions taken at that meeting be and hereby are ratified and approved. Have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Resolved that the claims for the warrants dated August 13th, 2015, totaling $275,090.42, warrant 3 general fund, $3,575 warrant 4 trust fund expenses, $770.71 warrant 6 trust fund, and $18,108.75 warrant 3 capital reserve fund, and the village payrolls for the period from July 10th, 2015 to August 6th, 2015 be ordered and approved. Have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Item 1, A. Ottavino, World War I Condition Survey, $4,500. Absolute Shine Spa, Vehicle Cleanings for the Ambulance, $2,350. Page 2, Aldo Andrioli, August Engineering Fee, $3,250. Anywhere Chair Company, chairs and umbrellas for the Cooper's Beach, $4,164.25. Atlantic Coast Embroidery, DPW Department Shirts, $2,159.33. Page 3, Bourne Marketing, Summer Newsletter, $1,985. Cast Productions, July Videotaping Services, $2,296.40. CC Electronics Installations, 2 payments, both for a light bar and a siren for 2 different vehicles for the fire department, $2,657 each. Page 4, Cook Marin and Associates, Insurance Installment, $7,500. Horwitz Auto Body, flowing onto page 5, $2,025. July towing fees. Galalio Sod Farms, fertilizer for the Parks Department, $1,057.50. Page 6, Eastern Suffolk BOCES 2015 Employee Assistance Program, $4,233. EMT Governmental Accounting Services for July, $1,706.25. Page 7, Firematic Supply, Rescue Jack for the Fire Department, $11,673.64. Fulham ENT Services Division, Topsoil for the Parks, $1,980. Page 8, Granger AC for the Parks Department, $1,880.10. Page 9, Terrace Hardware, flowing on to page 11, July Supplies, $2,344.77. Page 12, Jay's Lynch Irrigation at the Chamber, $1,960. Johnson Electrical Construction Corp., July Traffic Signal Maintenance, $1,350. Page 14, Lynch's Garden Center, $1,289.05. Fertilizer and Lynch and Garden Center, again, supplies for July, $1,172.81. Mayday Communications, annual maintenance for the police reporting system, $3,500. Page 15, Messiano Consulting, grant writing services for July, $1,087.50. Water supply, flowing on to page 16, July parts, $2,575.94. Bottom of the page, Nelson Pope and Voorhees, planning services, $1,314.74. Again, on page 17 for the planning board, $1,093.75 and $3,120. And two payments to Nelson Pope and Voorhees for the zoning board, $1,728.10 and $1,017.84. Page 18, Norsec and Son Karting for the Parks Department, $1,127 and $1,074. And for the Highway Department, $5,543.50, all for July. Page 19, Office of State Controller, June fines to the court, $20,029.50. Page 20, Perform Printing, parking tickets for PD, $1,611.80. Page 21, PF Distribution Center, Fire Department supplies, $1,483.90. Pine Barrens Printing, building permits, $1,013.97. Professional estate care trees for the Parks Department, $5,700. PSE&G, bill for July for the traffic signals, $1,040.25. For buildings, $5,453.33, $3,638.93. And for the fire department, $5,169.45. And on page 22 for streetlights, $4,293.09. Page 25, Sprague operating reserves, 3,000 gallons of gasoline, $6,106.50. Strategic safety dynamics, it's carbon monoxide meter for the fire department, $3,928.68. Suffolk County Water Authority hydrant rental, $26,833.50 and $2,346.01. Taser International, taser and supplies for PD, $11,527.43, and the warranties on those tasers for 4 years, $1,779.50. Page 26, State Insurance Fund, disability insurance payment, $2,408.59. Vince Toomey, legal fees for July, $7,864.99. Tyco Integrated Security, quarterly security for 25 Jobs Lane, $1,455.42. Vehicle tracking solutions for August, GPS system, $1,055.56. Verizon flowing onto page 27. For July, $3,726.90 phone bill, and the August phone bill, $3,739.18. Page 28, Wayne Scott Sand and Gravel, material and dumping fees, $3,317.64. Moving on to the trust warrant. Payment to James Lynch Irrigation, irrigation at the Agawam Boardwalk, $3,200. And on the cap reserve warrant, you've got payment to Stott Architecture for the ambulance, $18,108.75. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 3, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the hiring of the following as chair and umbrella attendants for Cooper's Beach at an hourly rate of $9. Victoria Russo and Ryan Bonaccio. Have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second. Discussion, these are just rollover people, not added to the staff. That's Caitlin's starting to lose people now for the college. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following salary increase for Cooper's Beach attendants effective July 24th, 2015. Alex Dubrowski from $9 to $10 an hour. Emily Gillespie, $9 to $10 an hour. Lyle Smith, $10 an hour to $10.50 an hour. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion, these are just 3 people that have been with us for a number of years, that after 3 years, Caitlin automatically gives them an increase, but when she did the initial hiring for this year, didn't realize that it was a 3-year term. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget transfer. Increase in A36-2013, building inspector part-time, and decrease in 3120.1, police personnel, $30,000. Can I have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second?
Second?
Discussion, this is for the hiring of Sam Maltese on a part-time basis. It was originally budgeted in the police department, but since he's reporting in the building inspector's office, we're just shifting it from one department to the other. All in favor? Aye. Whereas the Suffolk County Water Quality Protection and Restoration Program, WQPRP, provides grant funding on a competitive basis for water quality projects as defined in Article 12, Section 2B of the Suffolk County Charter, and whereas the Village of Southampton has an interest in improving and protecting water quality in the various water bodies of the village, including but not limited to Lake Agawam, and whereas the Village of Southampton intends to submit a proposal to the Suffolk County WQPRP Review Committee, which has established a deadline of August 14th, 2015 for proposals, and whereas the proposed project will provide for design and development of drainage structure on Jagger Lane to divert and capture stormwater, and whereas the proposed project is supported by the Lake Agawam Comprehensive Management Plan, and whereas the Suffolk County WQPRP program provides grant funding up to a $250,000 maximum in support of selected projects, and now therefore be resolved that the Village Board of the Village of Southampton hereby states its support of the Jagger Lane project, and be it further resolved that the village will support the required minimum 50% matching funds toward the total project cost supported by the Suffolk County WQPRP should the project receive funding approved from the county, and be it further resolved that the village board authorizes the mayor or his designee to sign any and all necessary documents pertaining to the project, including but not limited to an intermunicipal agreement, subject to review and approval by the village attorney to participate in the above referenced program. Got a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion, this is on Jagger Lane's a drainage program. It's estimated to be $49,000 in total cost, of which the village will be responsible for half of it.
It's another one of the opportunities for us to catch stormwater drainage before it hits Lake Agawam. And again, another piece of the cleanup of Lake Agawam. We've had successful projects at Bowden Square, on Windmill Lane, on Hill Street, and yeah, a few other places. So this is another opportunity for us.
Big
to-
runoff area.
Big, so.
Whereas is in there, and now therefore. Way to go, Counselor.
I didn't write it.
Oh, you read this one?
No,
Does that
there's-
look like my style?
No.
And now therefore, but yeah, it was different. I was gonna say, that's not usually what you do.
This is the wording that's necessary for the grant application
Right.
with Jim Messiano, who's been absolutely fantastic for us.
Sure, so I agree.
Right from the start, so.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And last item, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves accepting the bid of Pazza Contracting Corp. in the amount of $170,000 for the restoration of the wall along Joe's Lane at the Southampton Arts Center as recommended by Chaliff and Rogers Architects. Have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second?
Discussion around this, so.
Okay, we went out to bid on this project. Obviously, this is the restoration of the entire wall and the opening of that opening of the extra entrance into the grounds. We had 4 responses on this bid, the first coming from Mo Contracting for $50,015. However, it was a defective bid. It didn't include the railings. It was also not a sealed bid. It didn't have the surety bond. It didn't meet the requirements of the bid specs. Next one came in at the 170, which was Pazza Contracting. They're based out of Astoria. The third one came in at Carter Lentz at $362,485, and the last one came at A. Ottavino at $1,289,759. Huge disparity. Paul Rogers went through the specs, did the reference checking on Pazza. He's dealt with them on 2 other projects, one being the Bridgehampton School, and he was very satisfied with their work and henceforth recommending that we accept their bid.
Any further discussion on this? It's a long time making walls in awful shape.
Yep.
Yeah. But are we gonna match the bricks? I mean, that was always a discussion.
Right,
and the
that
cap
and
work.
also the capping,
Capping.
so the coping stones on it.
This one's just actually gonna.
They're actually going to shoot for late September to start the project.
Okay, cool.
That's the goal. And there is, I think, a $35,000 or $40,000 grant coming our way with respect to this.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, no discussion items here. So we've got a lot of discussion tonight. And there are comments from the board members here. Trustee Yaz?
Steve, I like the different color on the sheets.
I was using Brenda's machine, that's why.
Wow, okay. No, I just want to thank the public for once again showing up. A lot of discussion tonight. As usual, as I said in the past, half the room is for it, half is against it. At the end, we have to make a decision, and I think using somebody's phrase in the audience, timing being the essence, I think tonight's move for the FEMA to go we enacted tonight, I think was a good step, and certainly one of many that needs to be looked at as we move along. So again, I thank you very much for everybody attending tonight, and the Planning Commission, Paul Travis and his crew that came in to clarify a lot of points that I think really helped sell the item a little better. So I just want to thank everybody.
Trustee Irving?
Well, this is probably, Nancy McGann would really be great if she was here tonight to chip in on this, but in reading the Southampton Press in the past 2 weeks, time and time again, you constantly hear from the public in regards to traffic. And the through traffic through this village is just unbelievable, especially along Prospect Street, and they're cutting off and going over to Halsey and down Halsey and then out onto the highway. And I really have a big concern because we have projects going forward that are going to increase density, increase the number of people. And with these projects taking place and the building and the extra, even the building further east and in the town, it's going to be very, very hard for the village. I know on Prospect Street, when my kids grew up, they used to play out in the street. All the local kids would get out there and play ball and have a great time. Now it's backed up 4 o'clock all the way to the other side, and one of the scary things is that they drive so fast. And I've spoken about this before and often been told, oh, they aren't going that fast. It just looks like it because they're on a small residential street. Not so. I think they try to get the maximum speed down those roads, and a lot of those roads don't have sidewalks, and there's more and more people coming from the train station and walking along the edge. It's just, unless we can figure out, and I don't know what the answer is, but unless we can figure out something to control that traffic and get them back on the highway where they belong, there's going to be an incident that none of us would want to see. And, I think we got to take a close look at it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Bill?
I want to express my gratitude to the Planning Commission for all their work, and after what we did do tonight, I hope we will pursue some of the other issues that were being sought here tonight as to their relative value and so on, and if they are as important as those people represented, I really think we should go after it and surprise them, as that we're not just going to stop here and call it a day. The other thing is, I do think that this letter that we got from the association in Myers-Swazi, we should all read that and look at it, because I do think the ARB, sometimes things happen there that are worrisome, and the lawyers can really get you going crazy, but somebody's going to a lot of trouble, and I would like to maybe sit down with them at some point and go over, and if this, to the extent that this is right, let's pursue it, and if they're wrong, well, then we'll tell them. But it's an important board.
That it is. All right, thanks, Bill. Nancy's not here tonight, so unfortunately she fell, and hopefully she's feeling better. But last night at the Planning Commission, there was a presentation by H2M in reference to the sewers and the creation of the district and the creation of the sewered area and the cost around it and the type of plant that's designed, time frames from this.
There are going to be some next steps associated with this that we're going to be moving forward with, and they're going to come in front. They've got the location, they've got the plant laid out. There's some pretty good feedback from people on the cost and how it's distributed. And I think there's some education pieces on what the plant looks like, the smell, the smell nuisance prevention programs that are in place. I would tell people to go over to the Bishop's Pond, where there's a treatment plant at that condominium place. It uses the membrane that they're talking about for this, and there are no smells associated with that. There's no sound associated with it, and it's a smaller building, and most of the leaching field is all underground. It's all grassed area, so understanding what it looks like is important. The other piece is that one of the concerns has always been that if you take that water out of this area and you don't recharge the aquifer area, the recharge area with this, you'll end up seeing reductions in lake levels and stream levels and all. Fortunately, the plant location is actually inside the recharge area, so all of this will continue to flow back in to keep Lake Agawam level at the right level, and our ponds and the other streams that are in those areas that will be would have been negatively impacted. So it was a great presentation last night. H2M's done some really good work around this, and we really have to move forward with this. And but I'm sure Charlie filmed it, so there'll be an opportunity to see it. The study actually is on. It's going to be online. Probably tomorrow it'll make it online on the village website. And I encourage people to read it and look at the area around that. So other than that, it's been a very busy summer. The police have been very active down on the beach, and I know that one of the issues we're going to have to sit down with the town trustees and the Saba group is look at the beach area and the activities and the volume down there. So it's something that needs to be addressed in the upcoming in the next year. Another project for us to look at. But it's been a good summer, very active summer. So that being said, I'm going to go to a second public comment. Anybody from the public would like to make comment? Michael. Surprise.
Believe it or not, I agree with Mr. Hattrick with the ARB, and ARB has become a very arbitrary board. They're not making decisions based on what the rules and the parameters are. You can't change the rules of what they're doing. I believe it's set by New York State and the Architectural Review Board. It's supposed to be a visual aesthetic board. And now they're ruling on zoning. They're telling people where their house should be, how far back. Some days they want people to put roof decks on. Next week you can't put a roof deck on. And these are all things that you are allowed to do by rights, by code. And they're I think somebody mentioned, I believe it's Jay Schneiderman's house. It's on the corner of Pulaski Street and David White's Lane. That house, I don't know how that passed. It's got vinyl windows in it. It's got a roof that's made out of an asphalt roof, and it's got a stucco chimney, a prefab chimney. And there's no rhyme or reason what they're doing, and I think there's really got to be some kind of rules with them if it's going to be wood roofs or wood siding or what type of windows, because nothing makes any sense. And I go through this all the time, and like I showed you before, you have, for instance, I didn't even know what that house was on Meadow Lane. I've been watching that for the last couple. I thought that was a beach, like a pavilion. That's what it looks like. It's 50, 60 feet out of the ground, And that goes through. But, you know, from me, my little house on Woolley Street, 2,800 square feet. They want a streetscape. They want every house on the block. They want to see a picture of mine in 3D. But this, the house on 40 Meadow Lane, I saw that go through. There's no asking for a streetscape or how much it's sticking out off the road. And that's the typical, and I'm not saying all the members are bad or something. There's a couple that are really good. But they don't understand sometimes what they're doing. And that's a perfect example. Now you're stuck with this house that's sticking out of the ground forever for our lifetime. And, you know, and everybody else on these side streets and small streets, like Hill Street, you get a problem. You got to go to 8, 9 meetings to get something passed. And I don't think it's fair. And I think you guys should really sit down with the Planning Commission and figure out what the rules are, what things are going to look like. And I don't think it's by saying something has to be 30 feet or 35. I don't think that's doing what you're looking for. I think it's got to be what percent of the first floor could be the square footage, what percentage of the second floor, so it's not so massed. I think that's what you guys are trying to do. And I don't think what you're proposing is fitting the bill of.
Yeah, that's why we're looking at the study. And
Right.
We're gonna take 100 houses and we're gonna hire, Paul Travis has got 2 architects that he's gonna be talking to that do not do business in the village of Southampton and are from, Long Island, and, that he's met with, and he's getting proposals from them, and we'll meet with them to make a decision. Because, you know, well, first of all, we don't want all the houses to look the same.
Right.
You know, and so some of the great architecture around here is really homes that kind of stand out, you know, and it's like that castle over by the hospital. Everybody loves that thing. And I can only imagine if that went in front of the ARB today. You know, I mean, or even the Manger home down on the ocean. It's just this beautiful, beautiful home that is very tall, you know, and so you look at different types of architecture around, you realize that, wow, you know, some of the stuff in front of the ARB with the neighbors be upset. Every neighbor would probably come out against the castle over
Right.
by the hospital. Everybody would. But now everybody looks at it and they love it, you know,
Yeah,
so you're
it's a
trying to
piece of
protect
art.
that stuff. So, you know, the job the ARB has is a very difficult job, you know, trying to balance out comments from the community, property rights for the people that are coming in front of it, having, you know, 30 different applications in front of them. Part of the issue with 40 Meadow Lane is it was at the end of a very, very long meeting. Nobody from the public came in opposition to it. They looked at the plans that were in front of them and made a decision. And I think almost the majority of the board, I think, felt like they would probably, you know, handle the situation differently. You know, they might still voted the same way, but they probably would have done some things differently. And but you know, now we're stuck with a building that really is from one direction very overpowering. And I think that I said it tonight. I think the pyramid law and the sky plane stuff, which is just a start, would have stopped that from even being in front of the ARB. And it's unfortunate that it did get there, but
Wait
it
till you
is.
see the skin of this building. All you're looking at is a superstructure. Wait till all the windows and
And it gets busy looking.
Yeah.
and it's concrete, I think, and in the historic district and supposed to match the Meadow Club and the surroundings.
Well, that's
Yeah,
another
maybe,
point.
But maybe there's opportunity. I don't know how it can be. The screening can be improved over there to break that up. I don't know. I'm not a landscape engineer or anything like that. I'm not. And maybe there's some opportunity to do that. I don't know the answer to that.
Well,
But, you're right. They have the ARB has a very difficult job, and they're beaten. They're hit,
Senseless, I know.
yeah, and they're hit by
wide variety of people that come in, and it's a challenging job, and there's a learning curve for every member of the ARB that's on there. And you try to get professionals, and then you try to get a mix of lay people, and and it's trying to balance out what is reflective of the community is a challenge when we're appointing people to the different boards. You want to have professionals like Brian Peretti, who's an architect, that's on the board. We had Ham, who was a builder. He's no longer there, but Esther's in real estate. She understands stuff. And Christina Redding has a whole background on historic homes, and so she brings a lot to the board. So, and so there's learning curves associated with stuff. So.
Well, I think for the planning commission to bring architects from out of town is not going to help. I think you have the best group of people in this village at the Historical Society, and I was just recently there, and it's amazing what they have. And they'll tell you how far a house should be from the street, and they'll tell you what was in the village. And I have a 3-acre site now on North Main Street, and I met with them. I don't want to build, because that's an important entrance, I don't want to build 3 things that look horrible. So I'm working with them now, and we're trying to figure out how to continue the picket fence from the bed and breakfast, how to recreate what was there originally on the Jagger property. We're going to go for a variance and try to build the 3 barns that were there exactly the way they were, and build 3 white houses that were there originally, and try to do it right, because that's very important. I'm not just a guy that's trying to make money. I mean, I really care about what I'm doing, and I really care how it looks, and, I've done things in the past for the village. You had a problem with that house on Pulaski Street. They were going to sue the village if they tore it down. I tore it down for nothing, because I know that can't stay there, and I made a deal with the homeowner, and she agreed with me, and she's like, all right, take it down, and I took it down. I mean, I'm not all about making money. I mean, I really am also about aesthetics, and I try my best to do it, but sometimes they take too much input from neighbors with ridiculous things. They don't want your walk here, or how are you going to turn around in your driveway? Those are the comments that you get, and they're not fair for them to say that, for them to get involved in your basement and your attic and everything else. So, I just wish that, you guys would set up something with them where there's some kind of, even playing field for people.
Well, and that's what we try to do, and that's why we try to balance the board out with a mix of professionals and people that are lay people. That's why you have the public hearings, and everybody's given an opportunity to make comments, whether you agree with the comments or disagree with the comments, but everybody has that right, So it's, I heard you talking about the piece on North Main Street last night, and it's very commendable to go and reach out and work with Tom Edmonds and those guys over there, and it's exactly what the village is looking for, and maybe you'll get the variances that you're looking for. I can't say one way or the other support it or anything like that, but if you're looking at, those are all good things, and those are.
Well, by rights, I could do 12,500 square foot lots, and I don't want to do that. I want to make 1-acre lots, and I think it's better, and I think it's, and I learned, I sat there for 2 hours at the historic, I didn't know half the stuff they were saying. I didn't realize how many houses used to be so close to the street, how this village was originally set up, how every house basically had a barn, because that's how they made a living. They had some kind of repair shop or horseshoes or whatever they did way back when. And I think that, maybe that's something that everybody on the board of the ARB should have to do, is sit there with them and really understand, because you'd be shocked sitting there what really happened 100 years ago and how they developed the village and what was built, and and the density and
I think
everything.
what you're talking about is, I think it's a great opportunity for you to reach out to Tom Edmonds and ask him to do a public presentation on that.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah,
That'd be good.
it's a great idea.
And he, with that property that they sold in the village on the corner over on, what is that? You know where they're,
Yeah.
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 Bonds, corner,
They-
Tiger Lane, yeah.
they made very tight covenants there, and that house is beautiful. And when it's done, it's going to be, perfection. And that house is very close to the street, and it's a perfect example how this village looked. And I never realized that. I never realized how it looked. And I think, it would be great if they came here and educated the ARB on what's.
Well, I think it's
And
more than
builders,
just, I just
too,
think
and-
more than the ARB.
Yeah.
I mean, architects, builders, the village board, the ARB, I think it's a great idea.
And what went on the ocean with houses and how tall they were and who built them, and, I think that would be really important.
Well, I mean, you heard Paul Travis talk about the homes that were really built here throughout the histories, and those were 3- and 4-story homes that were built down on the ocean that were massive homes.
Right.
So, the old Komodo house up by the bathing corp, and that was the pool house.
Yep.
So it's a lot to a larger house. So,
Yeah.
but so no, I appreciate your comments. Appreciate you coming out tonight and stuff and participating. And okay,
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Any further comments from the public? Okay. Okay. 21 Jump Street.
Yeah.
Your wife said the other day.
That's all my wife named him. Human Horseman.
She was making fun of us the other day. James Moore, Southend Village Police Department. Trustee Irving, this is kind of for you. Back at the beginning of the summer, I was put on a crew unit and mainly supposed to be on the beach, but we've been addressing other issues in terms of traffic and speeding, stop signs and all of that. I have been sitting on Prospect Street a lot.
No, I noticed that, yeah.
While they do speed, I just want to let you know that there was a few weeks ago, out of 32 vehicles, there was 2 going 31 miles an hour. The rest of them are 15, 19, 22, 23, 27, et cetera, et cetera. Given that, the next day I sat down there and I got 5 going 40 plus. So while I get it is an issue, we are there. We are doing something, trying to do something. I know traffic is an issue as well. I've been sitting on Moses Lane the last week and a half a lot, riding stop sign, doing seatbelts, inspections. The suggestion I have, and I don't know how easy it is to do, but the town did that thing on Sabonic Road where you can only, it's local traffic only, no commercial traffic in the morning or the afternoon. I don't know, maybe getting something passed to enact that on Moses. I don't know about Prospect Street.
Well,
Further off the beaten path, but
What they did on Sabonic Road is they made no left-hand turns off County Road 39 during the morning time frame.
right.
And that prevented that morning traffic, because, you were at Tuckahoe School. I
Yeah.
remember going to the town board meeting when everybody was turning there, and then you got big backups in front of Tuckahoe, and trying to take your kids across the street, it was awful. you
I also
know?
think it was for commercial traffic
Oh,
as well.
yeah.
I mean, the residents there, I know,
Yeah.
were complaining. But I don't know if there's anything we can do in this situation either, in
Yeah.
terms of, especially Moses, because the other day it was backed up to the Foxhole
Moses,
stop
yeah.
sign from the traffic light at Sunoco. And
But
that's just
that's what
everybody
we
trying
need,
to
is we need
bypass
your
traffic.
input.
Yeah.
You know, we need.
I
to-
don't have obviously
Yeah.
a solution, but, I know it is an issue and.
Yeah. I mean, part of the problem is that the light at St. Andrews has created a problem, because now
Mhm.
so it backs up at Hill Street, and now people try to jump off, and they end up through all the side streets and stuff.
Right.
So I'm talking about the supermarket up there and what that's going to do to. We have the issue on Moses where we got to back up, but if you go down Sandy Hollow Road in the evening time, that's backed all the way up to North Sea Road.
Right.
And so it's.
And I
it's-
live over there,
And
and
you live
that's,
over there, right?
and that's a
it's
pain.
And it's awful, so it's just
I mean,
as
we all
bad.
know, like, the traffic
Yeah.
is what it is out
Yeah.
here, and there's gonna be no unfortunately, I think resolving it, except, other than police enforcement, then you're gonna push those few people off and be, okay, they're sitting over here,
Right.
I'm just gonna stick to the highway and sit in the traffic. But,
I mean, really, the only way to resolve some of that is to eliminate the lights.
but
That's
that's
really, yeah, that would be the only way to do it. And then, and to eliminate any type of left-hand turns off County Road 39.
Well, I've always said that David White's Lane is a tough one
Oh, it's
because the
awful.
trucks can't make
right.
the turn
Yeah,
there. So instead of going down the highway and making your turn and go to the industrial area, they all come through the residential streets.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
the point is, it's just that, we are, as a police department, out there and
Right.
running the radar and writing the tickets. And,
No, I know.
but not that, it's not every car that goes by does speed. I'm not saying they don't speed. They
Yeah.
obviously do. I got the tickets to
Yeah.
prove it, but,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, no, it's, we probably, if we had a department of 150 people, we'd still have problems like that,
Correct.
So it's just, figure out what battles to fight and where to manage the people. And I think the chief does a great job. And then you guys are out there. You're very visible. You're doing everything that you can. It's very hard, very hard. Well, good.
A lot of
Well,
cars.
no, I appreciate you coming up with the statistics there. That's
How do you
great.
plan on being here tonight? I wasn't coming here for that.
Thanks for your.
So, are you even curious on which one you are on 21 Jump Street?
Yeah. That's the short, isn't it?
Are you talking about the original or the latest movie?
You're Channing Tatum. So there you go. So there you go.
Contemporary version.
All right. So.
He didn't bag that poor lady
You would've
that
been
took out
Johnny-
2
you would've
parking
been
places,
Johnny
did he?
No, he
Okay.
didn't. So,
He would have been Johnny Depp back in the 80s.
yeah, Johnny Depp in the 80s. There you go. So, anybody else from the public would like to speak? Okay. So, that being said, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing personal matters involving village employees and legal matters.
Second? Second. All in favor?